Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. A very good evening.
It's Sunday the 18th of May 2014 and we have a great show for you tonight. Loads of information. We are actually in Studio 2 and I'll have to congratulate Steve. Steve actually found out where the problem was. He found a gremlin in the system.
And beat the living daylights out of it.
He beat it up. He sorted it out. And well done, Steve. Fixed the problem. And so that you shouldn't hear any of that clicking noise anymore. It's all being sorted. So well done to Steve. Now, as I say, we have a great show tonight. We have Gordon James Gianninoto. Now, Gordon was on the show there last year. And Gordon has loads of brilliant information to tell us about what's going on globally. But before we get there, we find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, where are the communication?
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
046 927 1212 is the number that you will not get us on this evening because we are in Studio 2. You can also log into the chat room as well, as Mary didn't mention that, but you can log on to the chat room. That's oymradio.com, and you'll see the live chat button on the left hand side. There's already some people in there, so a big hi to everyone in there, and also hi to people on the peoplesinternetradio.com as well. So if you have any questions for our guests this evening, you can pop them into either of those chat rooms and we will copy and paste them and ask them at the appropriate time. Alan.
Cheers, Steve. Now, as you know, OYM, we touch on loads of subjects. We touch on local subjects, got to do with, whether it's the property tax or the water charges and everything else, local elections. But we also talk about the bigger picture, what's going on globally. Because, to be honest with you, if something is going to go off, say like Yellowstone, or there's something's going to happen globally, the last thing you're going to be worrying about is your mortgage and your property taxes and your water rates, because that's all that would be irrelevant if a major earth, situation happened with the planet. So with Gordon coming on, we're going to be really opening your mind and looking at things that people have a lot of questions about. And Gordon's going to help us he's going to give us the information that he has come across that might, give us an idea about what's going on. And a lot of positive stuff as well. So we're looking forward to talking to Gordon in a few minutes about that. But as usual, there's a few things that we have to go through first. Now, last week we had Ben on Vincent Brown, Ben Gilroy from DDI, on Monday night, and that's available on the TV3 player. And he was also on LMFM on Monday debating with other parties. And I do feel that the parties are running scared. Lorraine Higgins, the barrister from Labour, I just found her to be a very arrogant woman. And, how did this austerity affect Lorraine Higgins, I wonder? That's one of the questions I'd ask. They all, during the debate, they all seem to just be trying to justify their job. Maybe so they just want to keep the job and get the money coming in and everything else. But as I always say, if the foundation of the house is wrong, there's no point carrying on building the property because the foundation is wrong. We have to get rid of the house, get rid of the foundation and start again and build a solid foundation, and from there build a good house. And in my opinion, and it's my opinion, there's politicians carrying on building the house and the foundations are dodgy and that they're just ignoring the problem. So I do believe that that needs to be addressed. But it was brilliant to see Ben on LMFM on the talk. He did very well. And on the actual Vincent Brown show, DDI are beginning to get a lot of airplay and coverage on TV. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, what did we just notice there? Obviously half an hour before we went live, it was about 6:30 this evening on the Irish mainstream channel, which is RT1. After the evening news to tell people how to think, they actually announced we're now going to have a party political broadcast on behalf of Direct Democracy Ireland. Now, we were kind of just watching it with bated breath, waiting to see if they would throw on some class of a disclaimer, before they ran the political party broadcast. But they didn't. They just ran it as was, and I thought, well, fair play to them for that. It doesn't mean I'm going to be tuning in again anytime soon, but yeah, they did. So I mean, even mainstream, they have to start embracing change because there's so much disorganisation in the political system at the moment, especially from those who are running the country into the ground. But as Alan said, I think they are running scared. Even I was going to mention this for my portion, but there's even a lot of videos online at the moment asking politicians, just regular people asking politicians, and with a video camera, how was austerity affecting you? None of the politicians will answer. In fact, only there today. No, sorry, it was actually yesterday in Navan in County Meath. One of the TDs down there, Damien English, he voted for austerity, and even he was asked how it affected him, and he wouldn't answer. He was talking, his lips were moving, but he was just talking about, rubbish really, about, it affects my family. And the man said, no, how does it affect you? Well, people I know, how does it affect you? And he just kept going on, but he wouldn't answer. And I think they're all the same. Everyone who I've seen, they're all the same. The only one, actually, would you believe, who did answer was Jerry Adams. He was the only one who actually did answer, and fair play to him.
I think we have a name for that Damien English. I think we'll have to call him Damien Two Flush English.
Oh yeah. What did they say they call him anyway? They call him the slug.
The slug, because he was the man that said you only need to flush your toilet twice a day. So I think his name's going to have to be Damien Two Flush English. Since that's him. What you're going to tell us about fluoride, Steve?
As per usual, fluoride. It's a poison. That's all you need to know. Now, fluoride is a poison. So what they want to do is get us to sign a contract for the water. So if anyone tries to claim that fluoride caused ill health, they'll say, well, you signed a contract, and it basically means that the Water Board or Board Uisce or Irish Water will be exempt from prosecution, apparently. Now, Alan and I were talking about this yesterday, and it's quite interesting, because on the website there for the Uisce Éireann, this is the company who's supplying the water meters, and are going to be trying to extort money for the water that we already pay for with our taxes. I think it's going to be kind of like an employed contract.
Probably an employed contract, yeah.
Because there won't actually be a contract in place. But they're saying if you don't pay the water, they're going to bring you to court for breach of contract. Now, you don't have a contract unless you actually sign a piece of paper. This is my understanding, and a lot of other people's understanding of a contract. It can either be verbal or it can be written. But I have no written or verbal contract with Irish Water. In fact, I sent them a letter during the week, just in case they were unsure of that fact. I wanted to reassure them that I do not have, nor will I ever have, a written nor a verbal contract with you, and therefore I do not want one of these meters installed on my premises. Or my home. I didn't say my premises, my home. But it's all about contract. And seemingly, if you enter into a contract with them, let's just say, for argument's sake, this again is my own understanding, they send you a bill, you pay the bill. Once you pay the bill, then you're essentially entering into a contract, because they've sent you a piece of paper with some writing on it, and some spellings and some spells, and you've read it, and you've paid it. So therefore you accept what they've sent you, and as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of you're engaging in a contract. So therefore, fluoride in the water, you're accepting that. That's again my own understanding. I could be proven wrong, I don't know. But therefore, once you're paying for it, you're accepting everything about it. And I think we all know that's wrong. So fair play to the people in Cork, and also in Dublin, Raheny, Donamead, Edenmore, who are protesting at the moment. They're not letting these people install the water meters. And I believe actually during the week, several meters were removed from an estate in Cork due to the protest. Now, I don't know.
They're saying they're waiting till after the election, and then they put them back in. But here's the thing. We, according to the Irish Independent, non-payment of the water meters will result in a going to court and bring you into court on the non-payment of contract, on the contract debt. Yeah. But the wording is exactly the same as the e-flow people, that if you don't pay it, because there is something out there called the unilateral contract, where it's a one-way contract. But if e-flow are doing the same thing, they say the same thing about it will be treated as contract debt. But if e-flow are doing that, and people are ignoring e-flow and not paying e-flow, and e-flow aren't chasing them, then the water meter people are going to be inundated with the same thing. And e-flow have, if you look around the net, you will see a video by Harry from wethepeople.ie, and Harry has quite successfully proven and shown people how to dismiss an e-flow notice, and he's done it
He's living proof that it can be done. And from what we've heard, there are more people doing this as well. So if they're going down the same road as, or using the same wording, Irish Water, as eFlow, well then, okay. Sorry, I just noticed there we've had a technical difficulty with the People's Internet Radio stream. Okay, we're back up now. I do apologise, don't know what caused that. But so if they're going to be using the same kind of modus operandi, well, we can just use the same, no contract, return to sender.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, okay. The other thing that we've heard during the week was it's been reported from the Carlow electoral area that there has been shenanigans going on with election posters. Posters from DDI have been removed and put in out-of-the-way places, pulled down, turned to face walls and covered. DDI is not the only victim of this crime, as other independents and parties have suffered similarly. Interestingly enough, though, one party doesn't seem to be suffering at all. Funny that doesn't. It's just strange that there's some mainstream parties that don't suffer from this at all, but DDI and some independents are. There is a man who observed and recorded this. He's going around at dawn using a pole with a hook at the end to turn and pull down posters, and this is on video, is being recorded. So all these facts have been reported, and we hope the authorities will be investigating and dealing with the people who are doing this. It looks like someone is getting so desperate they're willing to commit crime, so they're defacing posters and pulling the posters down. And based on the fact that I've had a few people turn up at the door, different parties, and I gave them the Riot Act and read them the Riot Act. I think they're really getting concerned. I really do. I even have members of my family who are not really interested in politics, actually looking to actually go and vote and go down to make sure that the mainstream parties don't get in. So it's a good day. It's a good time.
Yes, it is a good time. It's an interesting time to be alive.
Exactly.
A very interesting time.
See what's going on. How's your week anyway, Chris?
I've just kind of told you, really in a kind of a nutshell there, how my week was. I've been checking out the videos and all the news that's coming in relation to the people protesting against the water meters, and that's it's gathering momentum. And I just want to apologise while I can for the people on People's Internet Radio. I've just noticed that the stream is a little bit ropey there. It's up and down. I'm not sure exactly what's causing that. If anyone is having issues, if you want to maybe head on over to OYMradio.com and try the stream there. That's working 100%. We can see from this end. But yeah, it's gathering momentum with the people against the water meters, and county by county, town by town, people are starting to wake up, and about time too. It's long overdue, and as we said before, we thought that the property tax would have broke the camel's back, would have been the straw, but it seems now that the water meters, they're the straw, because people are already struggling, and not that we want to see people struggling, but it's a good thing in a way, because it has woken up the fighting Irish. I'm going to say the fighting Irish. Let's hope there's a little bit of fight left in us. We've also been checking out some videos as well, as I say, about the people asking the politicians how the austerity was affecting them. And one guy in particular, I think at this stage he's infamous on Facebook and YouTube. He's been following a lot of them around and just asking the questions, just holding the camera into the face and asking the questions. And excuse me. And they won't answer. It's not that they can't answer; they won't answer. So he's getting a great following now on the internet. What else have I noticed? Yeah, the posters. I've seen a lot of posters, and I have seen some DDI posters and some other kind of independent posters, and kind of. I won't say that I have seen a lot of it, but I have seen a little bit whereby there's a couple of posters here, let's say from a couple of independents on a particular poll, and next day they're kind of gone, and they're replaced by I think it was Labour. The girl I seen was actually the chap, or the girl Alan mentioned, Lorraine Higgins. Her poster seems to have been put up in place of an independent. I think the independent was it Mary or Marie Harkin, I believe. Anyway, so there is a bit of shenanigans going on. Also seen during the week that election posters, they're supposed to be a minimum of 8 feet above ground. And anything that's below that, if they're on a pole, a lamppost or something like that, seemingly it's if an offence is being created. But there's a lot of posters meeting that criteria, being, say, less than 8 feet. Some are only like a couple of inches above the ground. And I think that's dangerous. Why do I think that's dangerous? Because you're coming up into a town or a village and you have these posters and they're obscuring your view of the footpath. There could be a small child behind that who could easily run out in front of you. That would be just my concern anyway. But there's nothing really else kind of tipping the scales, except for, well, there was another video Alan sent me over today which I did watch, and it's about all the shifts that's happening, the changes that are happening in and around the world, all the earthquakes, a lot of earthquakes, and I won't say tsunamis, but a lot of bad weather and heavy rain, birds falling from the sky, dropping dead, and hailstones the size of golf balls or baseballs, I believe is what they said. But there are a lot of changes going on, and I know we can probably touch on some of those changes with our guest this evening, Gordon, and we'll see. Maybe he might be able to enlighten us as to what's going on. And that's pretty much my week. How was yours? Okay, just a couple of things as usual. I was watching a video by Bill Thornton on YouTube. Very good, Bill. Brilliant information. And Bill said something very profound which applies to our judicial system and the people who enforce the laws over here in Ireland, which is the Gardaí. And he says they don't have respect for their own ignorance. And I think that's I thought about that. I said, that's brilliant. They don't have respect for their own ignorance, meaning if you don't know something, you would go off and check it out. Normally, you'd go off and check it out. But these people don't. So they don't even respect their own ignorance. And I thought, that's just quite a good statement from Bill. I have to compliment him on that. Now, just something as well, we're going to be talking later on at the end, just about the May 23rd voting. And just to make sure that when you go and cast your vote, please make sure that you bring a pen with you, a black pen, because they can easily rub out pencil marks. And just make sure that you put an X on the candidates that you want, and don't put an X on any other mainstream party if you don't want them. That's very important. I wasn't aware of this before, but that's, I know it says on the election thing, vote number 1, 2, 3, etc. in order of your choice. And a lot of people go in thinking, if there's 8 candidates, they figure they have to vote for, they have to kind of go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in different boxes. You don't. Because even if you give a candidate that you don't like, if you give them number 8 on the list, it's still a vote. Yeah. So don't vote. So only vote the people you want to get in. Don't vote the people you don't want to get in. Don't feel under pressure that you have to. Just put in an X on the people you want in, and that's it. And make sure you do a blue or black pen, not a pencil, just to be on the safe side. Now, I don't know what you heard during the week as well, that the Gardaí have now the right to strike and have trade union status. Governments have claimed over the years that giving the Gardaí a right to go on strike could result in a breakdown in law and order. And I thought, isn't that what is happening with the current corruption that the banks and the brown envelopes gone around? We actually have a breakdown in law and order. Unfortunately, it's not the people that's causing the problem. It's the bankers and the politicians that's screwing the system. So maybe that might be a good thing. Maybe the guards will eventually join the people and get the support of the people by, coming out on strike with us and the trade unions and say no more. But the way things are going with the politics, I have to say, it's things are going really well. And I hope with the we'll talk about the voting later anyway. But I have to say I'm very impressed with people actually waking up and taking a stance with the mainstream parties. So well done with that. Okay, we're going to bring our guest on. We had Gordon on the show, Gordon Gianninoto. We had Gordon on the show last year, and again we had great information from Gordon. And as I said at the intro of the show, if something major is going to be happening, they talk about the sinkholes that are happening. They're talking about the Yellowstone potentially going off, the USGS survey, the seismographs are, really high, reading quite high, and they're concerned about that. The Antarctic is melting. So if things are happening globally to the planet,
and they're going to affect us. I think the last thing that you're going to be worrying about will be property taxes and evictions and mortgages. Now, don't get me wrong, I think they are very important. In the scheme of things, everything is important because everything is related in some way. But sometimes, you know, it's nice to kind of maybe move aside and move away from the property tax, because we do talk a lot about that on the water meters, and find out what's going on globally and talk to somebody who's watching what's going on globally, and just get, you know, a heads up on that as well, so we can see what's going on both sides of the fence, so to speak. So without further ado, we bring our guest on. Good evening, Jordan. How are you doing?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be on, Alan and Steve. And you don't have me on often enough. Boy, have I got a lot of stuff. First of all, I want to start commenting about what you've been saying, because these are very more important subjects than you could ever imagine. And then get into some personal events that Janet and I have had happen, which are so interesting, and they're consistent with extraterrestrials telling the world what's about to happen. And of course, what you've been discussing is the elite and the powerful are struggling. These are their last days. So they're struggling to find a way to control everybody to the maximum, and that's the one thing you want to avoid. So it's a pleasure being on.
Yeah, thanks, Gordon, for coming on, because I know you cover such a wide range of subjects, especially on the global side, and we do want to cover that as well. Now, as I say, there are people out there. We had Gary Heseltine on, and Gary Heseltine is an ex-detective constable, and he runs the UFO database over in the UK. And we had Stanton Friedman on, and we had a number of people on. And if you could, you know, we've said it before. I said it to Gary, what do you say to people if they turn around and think you're mad, and they say there's no such thing as ETs? And basically, he just said, well, you know, they're idiots. Because there's so much evidence out there of what's going on.
Even the Pope discussed it the other day, and nothing is official with the Catholic Church unless they convene a council and they take a vote and they put it into the dogma. Then it's required. But the Pope has been very interesting, saying that that there are our brothers and sisters are out there on other planets, but then it went like off the deep end, which is probably going to lose a lot of Catholics when the ETs do land, because he was saying, well, if they accept the crucifixion of Jesus and allow themselves to be baptized in the Catholic Church, then we can really accept them. So you can just imagine that happening.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there you go. There's the thing, because we have to be aware, Gordon, that we know that von Braun turned around and said the last card will be for the whole kind of fake alien invasion project Bluebeam. And, there are people like Chris Thomas, who we've had on the show. He said, if you're going to think that ETs are going to come down and land on the lawn, well, think again.
Right.
We have to make the change, and we have to make the difference on the planet. Now, I completely understand the point of view, and you have to kind of open your mind, which is what we're all about. You're not going to, if you are an ET, you're not going to come down to a planet where people are not conscious of you, for starters, and not wanting to make the change.
Well, I'm going to clear that up, Alan, in plain English. So everyone, I hope you're really excited, because this is information that's just going to blow your mind. But basically, this is not only that Planet X is in between the Earth and the Sun and causing all kinds of problems, which are the Earth changes, but also this is about to be a graduation to a new level of consciousness, and those who can't function at that level are going to be dying off and going to other places. So this planet is going to be a place where unselfish people can have open contact with unselfish extraterrestrials. So the future is so exciting, it's just beyond belief. And so you've got the rich and the powerful trying to hold on for the last days of what they can do to, keep their power and keep their control. So the first thing I wanted to address was that the only way that people are going to survive, and this is what the unselfish extraterrestrials are doing, they're having one-to-one contacts and then group contacts from your villages and your towns and your cities, and they're having these contacts, and they're telling people, look, this is what's about to happen. You're going to have to find a high elevation, you're going to have to get away from the coasts, and you're going to have to be prepared to help each other living like the year 1800. You won't be without any science or technology, but it's going to be primitive compared to what you're used to. And you're going to have these survival communities, and when everyone in the community is unselfish, then the ETs will actually land in the community and give people things to help them survive. And when only the leader is unselfish, they will put things in the woods nearby where people can discover it. They won't conflict with the selfish people that can't handle it. So, but they're ready to help, and this is all a huge process. And the process is that every 3,657 years, Planet X comes through the solar system and creates more or less a bad or better pole shift. So that's one aspect of it. That's the apocalypse. That's the cataclysm. But this is different because there's about a third of the people on Earth or more are ready to graduate to a new level, and they cannot be held back by these selfish elite and powerful who are very jealous and want to stay here. And they've been given three choices, all the selfish extraterrestrials and the selfish people. Number one, you can leave. Well, the unselfish extraterrestrials are not letting any of the selfish leave. Humans. If you're a selfish extraterrestrial, you're welcome. Here's the open door, leave. But if you're a human on Earth and you're selfish, this is for you, this lesson, so you're not allowed to leave. Then you can turn to light and love, or you can try and stay and be destroyed, because there is going to be no place for selfishness in this future. So we have 7 billion people on Earth, and 2 billion of them are star children. In other words, they're very advanced souls from other planets, other places in the universe, and they've come here for this time.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Can I just stop you there for a minute, Gordon? Because
sure.
There's some people who will listen to our show who probably don't know who you are and didn't hear your last podcast with us, the show we did last year. So let's just take 5 minutes to get your background so they know who you are, and then we'll go into that. Yeah.
Well, I'm a trial attorney from Connecticut. I graduated at the top of my class in high school, college, and law school, working the whole time to pay for it I never had a school loan, and I was fully paid up the day I graduated by working 50 hours a week as a contractor, and I still graduated number one in my class. And when I was in high school, I was selected as a future astronaut and given specialized training in astronomy and space science and astrophysics at the Hayden Planetarium in New York. So when other people went on the bus to high school, I got on the train to New York with about 100 of what we were called the brightest science and math students in the New York area, and that was when I was 15. And then I had Princeton and the University of Virginia beg me to go to their schools of aerospace engineering and, of course, design missiles to be used as weapons. And I went to the University of Virginia for 2 years, and I dropped out. And I was thinking, well, I don't want to build things that will be used as weapons, because I had already seen UFOs, and I had had UFO experiences since I was age 5. I was taken to another planet for a big meeting, and when they took me, I was an adult, and that just about blew my mind. I tried to explain it to my mother, and she goes, well, that was a dream. And I said, no, it wasn't a dream. I went somewhere for 3 days, and I came back 30 minutes later. And then in 1964, my mother and brother and I, and thank God for that, because they both supported me, whatever I had to say about UFOs after that, we saw a mile-diameter mothership, flat on the bottom, round, hemispherical on the top, like a giant milk glass with an orange light bulb in the center, materialize over San Juan Harbor, Puerto Rico, and a door opened on the side, and one by one, 3 orange flying saucers flew out this open. It was like a garage door the way it went up into the wall. Flew out over the Atlantic and disappeared, and then the door closed, and once again there was no detail available. It was a mile in diameter, and it winked out. So I was thinking, why am I building missiles when I've already seen that there is this extraterrestrial technology? And obviously they're not giving it to us because we'd be extremely dangerous with it. But I figured, why should I be studying aerospace engineering? This would be ridiculous, like thinking that you're going to go to school to learn how to build brand new automobiles, and instead they put you on building wooden wagon wheels with wooden spokes. So then I worked for the United Nations on a code of moral conduct for international corporations. Then I worked for the State of Vermont Environmental Board for 3 years, holding environmental hearings. Then I went back to Connecticut and opened up a trial practice and married a woman from Denmark. and she got cancer and died, and I decided to move to the middle of the Maine coast, and I'm right now on top of a mountain with a 34-acre blueberry field, and I look out at 300-mile islands in the distance in the Gulf of Maine, stretching off into the distance. And I'm 2 miles back from the salt water, and after the pole shift, I'm going to be about 1,000 feet from the salt water. So I'll have a choice to either live off the land with turkeys, moose, deer, rabbits, all kinds of animals, or go down to the shore and catch lobsters, crabs, sea urchins, mackerel, pollock, Atlantic salmon, so live off the sea or the ocean. Yeah. So that's why I'm here. Is I moved here, and I got a new partner. I asked the ETs to help me find one, and I described what I wanted. That was kind of funny because I was so specific, and then a year later I went out to lecture on UFOs, and I met her. And we've been together 24 years, and that's Janet. And we live in a primitive cabin at the top of this mountain. We don't have plumbing. We do have electricity. We doused a well. And we bathe in the yard, and we heat the house and hot water with a wood stove. So we're living this lifestyle. In the meantime, the two of us have had over 36 actual UFO incidents. This is close up and personal, with cigar-shaped ships, discs, spheres, needles, cotton balls of different colors, any top hats. I mean, I've never seen two saucers the same in all these years. So gradually I started writing about this, and then it became possible to be on the radio using Skype, and that was like a huge breakthrough. It was like nobody ever heard of me, and I have no website. I'm not selling anything, and yet if you look up my name on Google, you'll see, last I checked, 90,000 links. So I would say that in the last 3 years, I've done probably 700 radio interviews in 105 countries, and probably 20 to 50 million people have listened to me on the radio. So there's a great interest in what I have to say.
Excellent. Well, this is what I was going to say to you, because with people, there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of disinformation out there. And the closer we can get to source, the better it's going to be. Because,
exactly.
There's people, we hear loads of things about certain people get channeling information, and people say, well, that's the Archons, and they're controlling this person, and they're controlling the channeled information. So these people, I think they're talking to ET, but they're not talking about this, that, and the other. And there's a load of and we know that the technology's out there to control and manipulate people and they might think they're talking to somebody, but they're not talking to somebody. It's all controlled. We had Solaris.
A lot of times that bad information will be very interesting, but there'll be some twist in it that creates fear or control, which is, of course, for selfish people, that's the only method they have is fear.
Yeah.
And so they need that fear spectrum in order to make you feel, well, if you don't do what you're told, then you're not, you're not good enough, and you could be destroyed. Whereas when somebody's talking about something that comes from light and love, it's an entirely different matter. And, there's no rush. When you hear the words, you have to decide right now. That's invariably a selfish situation, because, and I believe in the Creator, not God, but I just like to say God gives you all the time in the world to make the right decision. So, if somebody's trying to rush you into something, it's usually because there's something about that's a scam that benefits them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Gordon. Let's look at what's happening at the moment globally. We know there's a massive conscious level.
This is what I want to tell you is who's here. So we've got 7 billion people here, and 2 billion of them are star children. In other words, they're very advanced souls from other worlds, and they chose to incarnate here at this time to slant this operation for success. Then you've got a lot of people that have reincarnated, and usually it takes about 1,000 lifetimes before you suddenly, like a Jack Nicholson movie, you say, is this all there is? And then the secret door opens in front of you, and you realize that you have to organize all your intentions and behavior around selfishness or unselfishness, either way. So most people are like 60% selfish. Well, that's not good enough. You have to be 51% or more unselfish, and then you really are a service to other person. Selfish can go from 50% selfish all the way up to 90% selfish. So we're on the third dimension. some people call it the fourth, but I'll call it the third, where we are now. And there's selfish and unselfish are allowed to mix totally. But the Earth is about to graduate to a fourth dimensional world where there's a complete separation. In other words, selfish are on their own planets, unselfish are on their own planets, and the Earth is about to be an unselfish planet. So then the next step after that, the fifth dimension, all is one. So which path would you rather take? Selfishness or unselfishness if the eventual goal is all is one. So you can see that the selfish people definitely making a wrong choice. So what you have is about a couple billion people who have reincarnated, and about 1 billion of those have made a conscious choice to be unselfish. Then you have about 2 or 3 billion of unsparked souls. Now, this is controversial because you think, well, if you're in a human body and you're walking around, you're sparked. Well, no. If this is your first lifetime, you have no karma, you have no interest, and you have no skills. But as soon as you get interested in anything, it really doesn't matter what it is. It could be gardening. As soon as you get interested in gardening, then you're beginning to learn a skill, then your soul is really locked in and you're sparked. So you have these unsparked souls, and most of them are living in undeveloped countries. So right now, there are star child walk-ins taking over the bodies of unsparked souls. So conceivably, by the time post-shift happens, which that's the big question, when's it going to happen? And nobody knows the day or the hour, so sorry. But it's about to happen, and that's what all this stuff is moving towards. So at that time, probably 50% of the Earth will be consciously unselfish. In other words, they will have totally organized their intentions and their behavior to help their fellow human being. So right now there's 1,000 extraterrestrial races, unselfish extraterrestrial races here on Earth, letting everybody know individually. So they're not landing on the White House lawn or in Dublin in the town square. They're actually taking people up one at a time at night and telling them everything that's going on, and then they're creating a screen memory. Now, a frequent screen memory, if you're familiar with the theory of abductions, which I never call it abductions, it's more like voluntary contact, but the theory is that there's a screen memory. In other words, if you told your wife the next day that you were up on a saucer last night and you were learning about the future, they would probably try and have you locked up. And that's your boss, your brother, your sister, your relatives, your neighbors. So to protect you, they have a screen memory. So all you remember is people go, "Where'd you go?" And they go, "Well, I saw this big-eyed owl and I followed it into the woods. But I was only gone for 10 minutes. And people go, "No, you were gone for 3 hours. Where were you?" "I don't know. I just thought I was only gone for 10 minutes. Or I followed a big-eyed deer into the woods." So it's very common that there are these screen memories. And sometimes there will be events which you will think of as puzzling, but they won't be negative or disruptive. They'll be pleasant, but you just won't be able to place it. Like as a kid, we grew up 7 miles from the nearest street light, 7 miles from the nearest traffic light, 7 miles from the nearest store. We were deep in the woods. And all of a sudden the house would be flooded with light like it was in the middle of a stadium for a night game. And we'd go running outside and there'd be nothing there. And I realized later that those were the times that we were taken up on the saucers for meetings. And rather than have us remember that and get locked up and thought of as crazy and disrupt our lives.
Okay, question for you, Gordon. We have a couple of questions coming in now.
Sure.
But I want to ask you, what's the point in them taking you up, showing you what's going to happen, and then putting in a subliminal message that doesn't relate to it and you can't remember?
They're waiting for the governments to collapse and the pole shift to be imminent. The apocalypse will be on its eve, and then all of a sudden, all of that memory will suddenly be recovered.
Okay. Well, let's go, because the questions are coming in. There's a few queries about one or two things you've said, so we might as well start doing the quick fire questions now, because I have a funny feeling we're going to get a lot of questions in, and we try and get through as many as we can. So, Steve, over to you.
Okay, yeah, it's very good information, Gordon. Even at this early stage, we're only a few minutes in, and I'm learning lots, but there are a couple of questions coming in. I have 2 questions here from Jerry. Jerry's wondering, when you mentioned about the 2 billion, I think, the people on the Earth are star children, where does that figure come from, and who claims this? Jerry wants to know.
Okay, the Zetas. There's a woman who is in Wisconsin, and she volunteered to have a living tissue implant in her brain, not a metal object, but a living tissue implant, so she could receive telepathic messages from the unselfish Zetas. They're little humans. They're 100% human. They have big eyes. They clone themselves, and they have space travel. And so, since 1995, she has taken questions from the public, asked the Zetas, and they've dictated answers, and she's published them. And that website's got 40,000 pages of questions from the public with answers by extraterrestrials, and it's called ZetaTalk.com. And I suggest that to all of your readers that you start reading that website. It's extremely interesting. It has its own Google search engine internally, and just the first page has so many things underlined, and each underline takes you to a link of just those subjects. So you've got Earth changes at the after time, pole shift, the battle between good and evil going on Earth right now, all kinds of really interesting stuff. So the woman that does that is Nancy Leader from Wisconsin, and I've become friends with her, and she and I talk nearly every single day. My wife is in contact with the Zetas, and I'm a reincarnated Pleiadian, and I have an ability when I hear something to know whether it's true or not. I just ask my heart. And in your heart is a little blue flame, and that's where your eternal soul links to your physical body in this lifetime. So when you ask your brain, you get all the information, and it's hard to tell, is it true or not? But when you touch your heart and ask your heart, you know what sounds right and what feels right. And that's how I confirm my own information that I get from all these different sources.
And I think you're right. I think we have to stop living in the mind of the brain and start living in the heart.
Exactly. That's so important that you said that. That's a beautiful statement. If people would just try that every single day.
We have to, one of the things that I've come across, and it's something that I am trying to develop, is to stop being so logical, so rational, and start just living from the heart and start feeling instead of thinking.
Right, because ideas by themselves don't have any emotional content, but when somebody suggests something to you, you can listen to their voice and see how it strikes your heart. Does that come from love and understanding and compassion and empathy, or does it come from a coldness and an uncaring attitude? And those are the people and the situations you want to avoid.
Definitely.
So there's over 1,000 extraterrestrial groups right here from different worlds. Some of them are little jellyfish. They aren't even space travelers. They had to telepathically contact extraterrestrials with spaceships to bring them here. But they're participating through telepathy with what's about to happen. And what's about to happen is that they've divided themselves up into 40 working groups. And the group that works with humans in Canada, the United States, and Mexico, basically North America, the Zetas have taken North America. So if you have contact with an extraterrestrial in North America, it invariably is going to be with a Zeta. In Europe, I think it's Pleiadians, but I'm not sure, and I don't have anything to do with that. But that's to prevent duplication of effort. And what they're doing is they're contacting individuals, and they're taking whole groups from a town. They might take 200 people from a town up and show them the future and tell them that we love you and we're here to help you, and you can survive and you will survive if you help each other. Because the big mistake all the world has made is to place possessions in greater importance than people.
Okay. And here's a question that's come in, which is quite relevant since you're talking about that. What if you choose that? What if you don't want to go up? What if they, come down and they say, right, we're going to bring you up, and you go, well, I don't want to go. I mean, is that your free will? Is that your choice?
Yeah, you can not go. See, like attracts like. So, for instance, you've heard of the word auras and things like that. Well, actually, the Earth is surrounded by clouds of violence, greed, and selfishness. So it's actually a dark planet. But the extraterrestrials can see auras, and people that are unselfish have beautiful white auras. They're like candles in the darkness. So they are not making a mistake. When they pick people, they pick them not because they're picking them, but because they see that these people are the ones who are awake. These are the ones who are ready to graduate. So that's who they're taking up. They're not just going down the block and taking 200 people from your block. No way. They're taking the ones who have already woken up, that have a beautiful aura, that they can see are kind and loving and empathetic. Those are the ones who are being told what's going to happen in the future, and the rest are not being told at all. They're being told a minimal level that there's going to be a disaster, and you can choose to help other people or help yourself, your choice.
Okay.
And that's all they're being told. And I've met people who say, well, if anything happens, I'm just going to sit right next to the beach and let the waves sweep me away, and that's it. Because I don't really think there's any more to life than this. And so, that's their choice. That's what you have. You have freedom of will. So you can have it any way you want. But why would you miss out on this great graduation? And it isn't where they picked who's going to graduate. You yourself picked. That's why I say, and I've heard you say it too, wake up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm just waiting for them to come down and give me and Steve a nudge and talk to us, because what hasn't happened yet, which is concerning, because if they don't do that, I'd be thinking, what's wrong with us?
You might not be aware of that.
Huh?
You might not be aware of it. It may already be happening. I mean, look at what you're doing on this show. Is that some sort of an accident, a thing of fate? Did somebody throw a dart at a dartboard and all of a sudden you two guys are talking about this stuff on the air?
No,
I don't think so.
I'll tell you something, Gordon. If we had time, and me and Steve told you how me and Steve got together, it was all synchronicity. This was meant to happen. And myself and Steve have a moral conscience.
And see, when you're awake during the day, that's actually the part of your life where you're most asleep. Because when you're asleep and you're out of your body, you're meeting with all the other advanced souls. You're learning all the great things you've always wanted to know. You're making contacts that are later going to come true in your everyday life. And it's really exciting. I mean, it's so exciting. And that's why, Janet and I had some really interesting experiences around Christmas time that I just can't wait to tell you.
Okay, well, listen, we know we're going to have more questions coming in, but there's going to be. Tell us about obviously you talk about the pole shift, and and there's these question marks about the event, which Cobra talks about, and obviously we have greys that do abductions, and what are the cabal doing? And I mean, there's so much to talk about, but take us through why this point in time and what the cabal are doing. I mean, at the moment, a lot of people still see. You okay, Steve? A lot of people still see chemtrails. There's more taxes coming in. There's more people committing suicide because of the debts from the banks and everything else. And that's all people can see. So
right, and well, it's even the people that were the so-called global warming skeptics. Two of them were run over the other day independently on their bicycles. Oh, it's just a tragedy, another climate scientist dead. But they were the ones that were speaking out against global warming, because global warming is a lie. It's always been a lie. And one volcano, if it went off, would make the entire subject of CO2 in the air moot, because there would be so much carbon dioxide from one volcano that it would be ridiculous, So what's happening is Planet X approached the solar system, in 1983. It came into the outer solar system in 1999, and it came around the sun to the side where the Earth is in 2003, the end of 2003. And it's been sitting there trying to move clockwise while the Earth, Venus, and the dark twin of Earth, 3 planets, all 7,500 miles in diameter, are trying to move counterclockwise, because they're all in the same plane of the ecliptic. So the Earth has basically stopped its movement around the sun. Now the sun actually does turn on its own axis, and it does rotate. So we are rotating slightly, but there would be no seasons except for the extraterrestrials have been simulating the seasons for us. Now all this extreme weather is the wobble, because Planet X is laying on its side with its north pole pointed at the equator of the Earth like a flashlight. And north pole of Planet X is very powerful, and the North Pole of Earth is somewhat powerful, and they repel each other. So because Planet X is coming in from the side, it pushes the North Pole away from the Sun, because Planet X is at the 5 o'clock position of the Sun. So if it's 93 million miles from the Earth to the Sun, Planet X is off to the side, so it's not directly in the line of sight. It's off to the side, and it's 30 million miles from Earth, and it has a twin-stranded 5 million mile long tail pointed straight at the Earth and hosing the Earth, filled with rocks and gravel, iron oxide dust, and hydrocarbons. And these are the increase in the fireballs. You can go to the American Meteor Society, AMS, and you can look up, they have month by month fireballs. The number of fireballs is dramatically increasing because these are rocks coming out of the tail of Planet X. So as the North Pole points at the Earth and the Atlantic Ocean rotates towards the Sun, in other words, at sunrise over in Scotland, the Sun is beginning to hit the Atlantic Ocean, and Planet X is next to the Sun as seen from Earth. So the Great Atlantic, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, you've probably heard that word before, is a crack in a line of mountains that goes from Iceland to Antarctica. And in this crack upwells huge amount of iron magma, and it's actually making the Atlantic Ocean slowly wider. And it's like pasting an iron bar on the surface of the Earth. So as the Earth turns and this iron bar faces the North Pole of Planet X, it pulls Iceland down towards the Sun. And then as the Earth continues to turn and sunsets over the Atlantic, like where I live in Maine and at sunset, it releases it, and then the North Pole, instead of leaning towards the Sun, bounces back to being away from the Sun, because the magnetic pull of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is lessened because the Earth turned, and the repellent force of the magnetic pole of Planet X and Earth takes over. So you have this wobble, and it's repeated every single day at the same time in the same way. And so that's what's causing this weather, because you have the Earth moves suddenly, but the air stays where it was. So 1 minute you're under Arctic air, then all of a sudden as the sun rises over Scotland, the North Pole moves down towards the Sun, and that puts the Earth and puts Scotland and Ireland under tropical air. And then as the sun sets, it gets released, and you go back under the Arctic air. So what you've got is this huge clash between weather systems of the icy cold and the hot, steamy tropical climate, and that's creating these huge storms. Actually, the air is not getting any warmer at all. The Himalayas are adding ice like crazy. Antarctica is adding ice like crazy. The Arctic is adding ice. We just had the coldest winter on record where I live in Maine. We had 45 degrees below zero for 3 weeks. All of our bees died. Even our catnip, which is an annual plant which loves northern climates, especially New England, even the catnip died. I mean, this was one cold winter, let me tell you. And people, you talk about austerity. We don't have an austerity program. Just paying the heating bill in the northeastern United States, well, the whole northern United States, was incredible this winter. We went $2,000 over budget for just to stay warm. So this is something that repeats itself every single day, and the government's covering it up. And as the magnetic field of Planet X interacts with the magma in the Earth, it's causing it to roll around and roil, R-O-I-L, roil under the crust. And that's heating the ground from the bottom up. In other words, the floor of the oceans are getting warmer, and the land is getting warmer, but the air is getting colder, because you can't mix all this Arctic air into the climate without getting this coldness. So this whole thing about climate change, they changed the words, from global warming to climate change, because they realize the air is getting colder. When you have the weather report and it goes another cold spell, another polar vortex, who's kidding who? The people sitting at home watching their TV are snickering. They're going, you got to be kidding that this is global warming. I mean, they had an Eskimo village that a glacier melted. I think it was up in Scandinavia. and it exposed this Eskimo village. And all the climate scientists are, look how terrible it is that everything's warming up, and now they've exposed this 10,000-year-old Eskimo village. Well, I'm sitting there going, what idiots? Because how warm was it 10,000 years ago? How much industry was there 10,000 years ago? How many people were on Earth 10,000 years ago when the Eskimos built this village? They thought that was a great place to build a village. Well, and that's where they built it, you know. So
I'll tell you what, Gordon, we can talk about the weather, but we're going to actually have a chap on next week talking about the weather, and we're going to be more in detail. I'd rather get the benefit of you to talk about the other things that are going on. I understand where you're coming from with the global warming. We all know that's a kind of farce anyway. Because we can see what's going on. We've had other people on the show saying that we're going to go into a mini ice age anyway. Now, what I'd like to kind of touch base on, because we're going to have more questions coming in, is the fact that we talk about the event. Nobody knows when the event or the pole shift is going to happen. And I totally agree with you that from a community point of view, people will need to possibly, if the pole shift happens, move away from the coast and be able to be self-sufficient and start organising the people around you and communities and people who have skills. Now, what you said about, organising communities, we've talked before about time banking on the radio.
Right.
On the
show. There's barter, there's time banking, there's all kinds of things that will work. It depends on which way your community wants to do it. Somebody might be really good at making wooden spoons, and they can trade that for some wool, for a wool hat, I mean, it's endless, the possibilities. But that's why it's so important that Ireland and Scotland become independent, because as the system falls apart, who knows better what you need than the people who are local? So they're the ones who should be in control. You should have this local control over your community, and governments will collapse. They are so top-heavy. I mean, around here in Maine, we don't pay our elected officials very much. Actually, it's pretty small, $8,000 a year. But you get a job in Washington, D.C. for the federal bureaucracy, you're making like at least $150,000 a year. You're building a brick mansion in a gated community outside of Baltimore, and you have no worries. You've got a new car, you've got vacations, pension plan, everything's all set for you. And it's obscene. It's really obscene. And I love listening to you about asking the politicians, how is this austerity going to affect you? We all know the rich are becoming richer at a mad rate. It's just incredible how many really wealthy people there are.
We are having about 2 suicides a day on average. Because of the people, because of what the banks are doing. I mean, Ireland is being screwed left, right and centre by the Troika. I mean, I know they said they left in December, but the remains of what they've done, the banks have got away with blue murder. We can see the corruption, but a lot of things are now coming out in the open. And more people are getting more conscious of what's going on.
Well, all secrets are going to be revealed. So that's the beauty of it, is these people that think, well, as long as nobody saw me do it, then that means I got away with it. No, hardly at all. Because there are so many advanced souls out there that know everything you ever did, everything you ever thought, every action you ever took. And they are working hard to bring this out, because this is living a life of hypocrisy. And these people who have earned this graduation do not deserve to have any hypocrisy around them at all. They want honesty. They want people to look you in the eye, tell you the truth, work together with you to survive and be healthy and happy. I mean, the average person wants to have a nice place to go home to, food, clothing, a nice companion, a good family, and feel that whatever they're doing in life, they're really appreciated. And society has just taken that away from everyone.
Yeah, definitely, and that has to change. Now, there are people, I mean, we have people on our chat room, and obviously there's going to be a few people in the chat room that are skeptical of this. Now, I've heard the same thing. What you've just said, I've heard from other sources as well, that they've come in, and I'm keeping an open mind. It doesn't mean I'm going to believe it, but I keep an open mind. I entertain the thought. As you say, I quote it a lot of times on the show, Aristotle, the mark of an educated mind is to be able to entertain the thought without accepting it. Okay, now, I'm very open-minded. Doesn't mean there's things I will accept. and things I don't accept, because I look at things logically, and I think what's the possibility that is that plausible, and there's other things I will say, look, I'll take that and put it on the shelf, and when it happens, brilliant. If it doesn't happen, then no big deal. So it depends on how open-minded you are, and don't get stuck in the ego belief system. We always talk about our fluid.
If you're making a really big mistake, if you're waiting for somebody from Harvard to write a paper, publish it, and then show up at your doorstep and say, Harvard says. I mean, some of the greatest inventions in the history of mankind have come from people down the street in their garage. So, if you just dismiss something because the government didn't tell you or Harvard didn't tell you, that's a joke. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. I totally agree. And you have to keep an open mind, because, this is not just a physical fight. It's a spiritual fight. And for me, understanding the science and energy and everything else, I mean, even Einstein says you can't create energy, you can't destroy energy. Energy just is, it just changes form. And when you start looking at the science of it, so I do understand it from a spiritual point of view regarding the science of it.
And it is. It's the last great battle between good and evil on Earth, and it's happening right now in your life, in your daily life. And that's why everyone who's awake should take every step they can, from the local to the national, to try and straighten out what's wrong, because this is the time. And this is prophesied by the Zetas. They say that, pole shift is 10 out of 10. A 7 out of 10 is earth changes. 8 out of 10 is massive social change. And that's the phase we're in now. 9 out of 10 is huge volcanoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, disasters unparalleled in human history. But this massive social unrest and change, because these star children that are taking over unsparked bodies, they're in India, they're in Pakistan, they're in Egypt, they're in Libya, and they don't need a development phase. They're like a wound up spring. All you got to do is push the button and they're at full speed. And you're going to see social unrest at every level. I mean, look at what happened with the Vietnamese rioting against the Chinese factories and wanting to kick the Chinese out of Vietnam. This is happening on every single level, small and large, and you start where you are with what you've got to work with, and definitely get rid of fluoride. I mean, fluoride lowers your IQ. If they put fluoride in your water and you start drinking it, you're not even going to be bright enough to fight it. You're going to go, oh yeah, it must be good. The government told us it must be good.
Yeah, too many people are like that. Unless it's produced by somebody from science, then it must not be true. I mean, we've been told 500 years ago that the world was flat, until science proved that it wasn't, and then people start believing it. So just because it hasn't been proven doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But we're going to go over to Steve. Steve has a few questions come in there, so
sure,
take it away, Steve.
Have them.
Okay, Gordon. Yeah, earlier on you mentioned something about the unsparked souls, and I want to get this one in from Jerry. Jerry's wondering, when you mentioned unsparked souls, what exactly does that mean?
That means souls who have not reincarnated yet. They have no interest in life. They haven't accumulated any karma, good or bad. They have no interest. They have no abilities, and they're wandering around looking at the sky going, duh.
That's the Irish politicians then.
Well, I suspect that if they're a politician and they got elected, they're an old soul and they're very selfish.
Yeah, that's for sure, Steve.
Yeah, Jerry also wonders, Gordon, he said that you suggest ETs have divided the Earth into territories, where each group operates. So can we assume these different ET groups cooperate and meet to decide tactics?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. They're working together. There's 1,000 extraterrestrial races on Earth getting ready for this graduation, and they've divided themselves into 40 working groups. So there are some areas where there might be 20 different, but in North America, the Zetas are the leaders. And so if you have contact, you may meet other extraterrestrials. And we have, Janet and I have, but invariably it's on a Zeta ship with the Zetas taking the initiative.
Would you know if there's any of these groups in Ireland?
Oh, all over the whole world, especially a developed country like Ireland. There's so many advanced souls there. You guys are precious cargo. They don't want to lose a single person that's woken up. Nobody who's woken up is going to be missed. There's nobody that's going to be, bypassed or whatever. No, believe me. That's why the British Isles, Scotland, Ireland, all of them. You've got really advanced souls on there, and you're finally reaching a point where, it's like that movie where they opened up the window and they yelled out the window, "We're not going to take it anymore." That's what everybody's reaching, that conclusion. Every single day here in Maine, I meet people that go, "What the hell is the Congress good for?" They're getting this $150,000 a year salary, unlimited expense budget, and they can't agree on a single thing. And they're arguing over crap.
They can't do, their politicians are the same.
Well,
They can't
I'll give you an idea. I'll give you an idea how reversed things are, okay? Now, my wife went to take a Master Gardener course from the United States Department of Agriculture, and they said at the beginning, there was a group of about 30 students. They said at the beginning, about half this course is going to be on pesticides and herbicides. And the whole group said, we don't want to know anything about it. We want to get certificates as master gardeners for organic gardening. And they were speechless. And they went out and they actually found all these people to teach organic gardening. And my wife has a certificate of a master organic gardener. Well, guess what happened to the U.S. Department of Agriculture last week? They ordered millions of fully automatic submachine guns with 50-round drums. Now, okay, you've got the DEA, they've got semi-automatic assault rifles, you've got the FBI, you've got the CIA. Now, last year they armed the weathermen, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. They armed the weathermen. They're all packing 40 caliber semi-automatic pistols and getting pistol training. Now they're arming the postal workers. They've armed the Social Security workers. When you go down to say, well, now I'm 62, I want to go on Social Security, those people are packing. So it really warms my heart to know that the United States Department of Agriculture felt that a 40 caliber pistol wasn't going to be enough. A 7.62 millimeter sniper rifle semi-automatic wasn't going to be enough. They ordered themselves fully automatic submachine guns with 50-round drums. Now, this is the government that supposedly, when you go into a government office, it's you who are paying their salaries, isn't it? Aren't they working for you? And now they're going to be fully armed and they're going to think nothing of attacking you?
Well, it seems to be going a bit mad over there in the States at the moment. We have our own issues, but it seems to be a bit mad over there. But you're going to get people who are skeptical, and I will say to people on our chat facility and listening to the show, even listening to the podcast, look, there's a way of looking at life, okay? And is it glass half full or half empty? And if the glass is half full, you look at it in a positive way. If the glass is half empty, you're looking at it in a negative way. And there's some people out there are just happy to have a glass. And you have to look at the way you look at life. And
this is why I hope I sound excited, because I am. I'm very excited to share this with people, this enthusiasm that there's a new world coming, the world you always hoped for, the world you always wished for, the world you always thought about, but you never could put into words. I'm putting it into words for you. I'm telling you, it's here. We're going to see it. It's going to envelop the whole planet. Governments are going to collapse, religions are going to collapse, banks are going to collapse, economies are going to collapse, and it's going to be neighbor helping neighbor, and you better just get with it, because if you think that the system, the way it continues, because, probably you benefit, you've got a nice salary, you've got a nice house, you think, I've got a mortgage, I've got credit cards, what more can, all that's going to collapse and go away. Can you eat out of your yard, your dooryard? Can you go out your door tomorrow to your yard and eat the whole day out of your dooryard? And if you can't, you're not ready.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, let's look at the science of this, okay? We know that we are due for a mass ejection from the sun. Okay, coronal mass ejection.
Well, no, let me just tell you. See, first, when the sun was supposed to be quiet, Planet X was coming through the outer solar system with the North Pole pointed at the sun. That made it erupt against all records, against all theories. They're like, the sun should be quiet. Why is it erupting? Then it comes around the face of the sun and it's pointing towards Earth. The South Pole of Planet X is sucking up all the loose magnetic energy from the sun and quieting it down. It's supposed to be massive storms, massive ejections, and nothing's happening. And there's another reason. The extraterrestrials have said nobody should worry about World War III. We have already neutralized all the nuclear weapons. There may be some nuclear weapons and some skirmishes, but there's not going to be a nuclear World War III. Number one. Number two, there's not going to be any asteroids hitting the Earth because we're watching for you. This is a valuable, precious experiment, whole of planet Earth. And this has been planned for centuries. This has been planned for eons. And this is coming to its culmination right now. And they're not going to let an asteroid destroy it. And they're not going to allow a mass ejection from the sun to destroy it. So there have been some ejections, and they've just, wouldn't you know it, they weren't aimed at Earth, or wouldn't you know it, they just shrank all of a sudden. Maybe a giant mothership the size of 10 Jupiters came and sucked it up. But the point is, there are people who are very advanced working to make sure that nothing goes wrong with this experiment. And that's what you've got on your side. So you can stride out into the daylight tomorrow and go, this is what they've taken care of is the big stuff, so I don't have to worry about it. Now I can focus on my local situation.
Right. And what about the likes of the Malaysian flight, the MH370 that disappeared? What happened to that?
Okay. I'm glad you asked because it's definitely Planet X caused. As granite on the plates, now you might not think that granite being 200 pounds a cubic foot that it would float, but it actually does float on magma. So that's what the crust of the Earth is all these granite plates. Granite is mostly made of quartz crystals. When you squeeze quartz crystal, you get the piezoelectric effect. In other words, electrons start flowing. And probably more than a few of you have lit your barbecue with a little device that's about a foot long, and you pull a trigger and a spark comes off the end. And what that is when you pull the trigger, you are squeezing a quartz crystal, and that's what makes that spark. There's no batteries in there. There's nothing to wind up. That's just you putting pressure on a quartz crystal and electricity flows. So as the plates of the Earth move around and squeeze each other, you're creating these electron flows, particularly in shallow ocean areas. You're creating these electron flows. Meanwhile, in the upper atmosphere, you've got this huge magnetic field of Planet X affecting the magnetic field of planet Earth. So you've got these magnetic hot spots. So what happens is sort of like lightning, but you don't see it. It's not visible. Okay, so the first plane that went down because of that was the Airbus 330, flight 447 out of South America that was headed for Paris. They got about 6 minutes into the flight and their control system started cascading failures. And they knew exactly where it was, and even knowing where it was, it took them 2 years to recover the black box. And they never released what they found with the cockpit. But I'm telling you that with this magnetic hotspot overhead and this pressure of the crystals under the ocean below, it's like an invisible lightning bolt that shorts out the electrical system in the cockpit. These chips, some of these chips are only a molecule thick, and it doesn't take much electricity to short them out. And they had the pilot saying, this control went out, now this one went out, now this one went out, and then it crashed. So what they did after and this was 4 years ago, they found that the pilot tilted the nose of the plane up too high, it went into a stall and crashed. Well, that's a lie. That's a lie to cover up the tail of Planet X. And this can happen every other place where there is an electron flow below, and one of the most prominent is the Southeast Asia plate. Under the South China Sea, the Zetas said 3 years ago that 8 parts of Jakarta, Indonesia would go 80 feet under salt water, and they have. And the Indonesian government lies to the people and says, well, this is global ocean rise, this is heavy rains. No, you don't get 80 feet of salt water permanently from, if it's 80 feet in Jakarta, how come it's not 80 feet in London? How come it's not 80 feet in New York? This is the sinking of the Sudra Plate, and there's a squeezing going on there. So when that flight took off and it went out over the South China Sea, it had a short from the magnetic hotspot above to the electron flow below, shorted out the whole plane all at once. So they had minutes before they suffocated to death. Now the requirements are that the pilot drop down below the air lane and turn so that he get out of the way of other planes that'll be flying there. Without knowing what the problem is, that's the requirement. You drop down in altitude and you turn. So he must have been trying to reprogram it as he was unable to breathe, and finally he stopped. Now that plane, thank God for the handshake between the satellite and the Rolls-Royce engines, they were keeping track of it. Now, Malaysia had not paid for the monitoring service, so all that the engines did was constantly contact the satellite saying, here we are, and the satellite said Malaysia didn't pay for its service, so that's it. And then 10 minutes later, it would contact the satellite again and say, here we are, and Malaysia, and then that would say, well, Malaysia didn't pay for its service, so we're never going to know. So it just kept flying for 8 hours. That's clear. That's absolutely clear. And I've talked to a psychic who has seen it on the bottom intact. He said it's on a slight slope. It's not as deep as the area around it. There's a little plateau, and it's laying right there intact. Now,
what about the people? What about the passengers? They're dead, are they?
They're all dead. They all suffocated within a minute. Most people would suffocate. Some people could hold their breath and be able to function for up to 4 or 5 minutes, but most people would be dead within a minute, and the plane would be flying on with the pilots and the crew. So they've been searching, because Malaysia, the last thing they want to tell people is if you fly out of Kuala Lumpur over the South China Sea, you're in danger of having your flight go down. So they definitely don't want anybody to think that. So they're like, well, maybe they were Muslim, maybe they were terrorists, maybe they hid the plane in Pakistan, maybe they did this, maybe they did that. But they didn't. And there was no wreckage. I mean, if you were a billionaire and you could buy yourself a plane, I highly recommend that the number one plane for you to own is the 777 from Boeing. I mean, that is a magnificent thing. Until the pilot landing in San Francisco hit the tail on the seawall, nobody had ever died on a 777. And you can see that if they were to bring the cockpit up and find that all the chips were shorted, they'd still say, oh, the pilot lost it and he whatever, you know, and it's an excuse. But 4 days later, Malaysian Flight 066 took off from Kuala Lumpur, got over the South China Sea, and the same thing happened, but it survived. It was on its way to South Korea, and all the passengers said, the pilot came over the loudspeaker and said, we may have to attempt a water landing. Everybody please put your life jackets on. And while he was saying that, there was all the snapping and crackling in the cabin, just like a lightning storm, like an electrical storm, right in the air around them. And somehow one engine kept flying, and he had some control, and he was able to make an emergency landing in Hong Kong. Well, those 3 flights, 447, 370, and 066, are all the same problem. And it's going to keep happening. And the Zetas say that wherever there's this huge squeeze, you're going to have it. And that's the southeast coast of South America, the north and northwest and northeast coast of South America, both sides of Central America, the whole Caribbean, the eastern end of the Mediterranean, the western side of Lake Superior and Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes, and other places around the world where there's squeezing of the granite, creates this electron flow, and then you have this magnetic hotspot in the atmosphere above the plane. That's going to keep happening. And this is not the end. And people should really start thinking about maybe taking a bicycle, a train, or
give up the flying just for now until it sorts itself out. I'm just conscious of time, Gordon, and just more stuff we have to get through. So that's great news. Steve, you have more questions there, do you?
Yeah, I do have more questions. just going. I'm kind of someone who came in a while ago, so I'm kind of backtracking a little bit.
Okay.
Anon Wolf, in relation to what you were saying about the pole shifts and all things related to that, Anon Wolf was wondering, please ask Gordon, what's the point, as we in Ireland will be under water, according to ZetaTalk, when all this goes off?
Well, that's the reason why it's so important that you listen to me. You get ready to move. Now, you look at Crimea and Russia and you think, what the hell's going on in there? Okay, Eastern Ukraine was Russian. There are a lot of Russian people there. But what's really going on? What's really going on is when the pole shift starts and Europe starts going underneath water, people are going to want to migrate east. Now, Russia is going to be 2/3 underwater. The only part of Russia that's going to be above water beside the Ural Mountains is the Siberian Plateau. Now, if I said Siberia, you probably think, well, that's a swamp, it's low, it's going to flood. But no, it isn't. So the Russian government, just the way the United States government is moving the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, everybody to Denver, the Russian government is moving all of its offices out of Moscow to eastern Siberia. So they're looking at the map and they're saying, as the water comes up, because all the ice will be in the wrong place in the world, and the water will come up 700 feet. So as that flooding progresses, people are going to head east towards the Urals. Then they're going to try and cross Russia, and Russia needs to hold Ukraine to keep people from crossing over into Russian territory. So that's what's going on there. That's the same reason that the British government has reestablished a huge base in the Falkland Islands, because a new continent is going to be rising between South America and Africa, and the British Empire hopes to expand itself right down to that continent and claim it for England. That's why Libya was destroyed, because the European royals said to the United States, can we move there and be safe? And the U.S. said, no way. So they seized Libya because it's got an unbelievable water aquifer and sweet oil, and they're going to just come ashore, all the European armies, the German, the French, the British, they're going to come ashore on Libya, and they're going to move inland to the mountains, and they're going to establish a brand new country there that will be the future European royalty and their home in the military.
Can I just add? I have seen 3 maps for our listeners. I have seen 3 maps. I've seen the map from Edgar Casey, who was a prophet in the 30s. I've seen George Michael Scallon's map, and I've seen ZetaTalk as well. 2 of the maps for Ireland, for people in Ireland, 2 of the maps actually show, if you can look at it, just picture a map of Ireland in your head. For people who are used to looking at Ireland, there's from, say, Belturbet, which is up the north of Ireland, to about Leixlip, maybe the M4. That area there is like, if you think of it kind of an egg shape, that area there on 2 of the maps, it says it's the only place in Ireland that will be above water. Now, where myself and Steve are located, not far from us, I mean, I'm 525 feet above sea level anyway, where I am, and down the road from me, 5 minutes down the road, there is another mountain there that's 825 feet above sea level. So I'm not far from there, and Steve's only down the road from me. But that area on these 2 maps actually show that that's the only place in Ireland that will be above water. But then on another map I've seen, the only place that's above water in Ireland is over in Galway. So
right. Well, you can trust the Zeta maps. You can trust them, but you've got to remember the oceans are going to come up 700 feet, but England's going to sink another 150 feet on top of that. So the safe area is really 850 and up. So that you have to worry about. Now I'm at 535 where I am, but New England, particularly Maine, is going to suddenly rise 500 feet. So in the same way that you have New Zealand is east of Australia and it's a separate continental island, all the mountains from Maine down to Georgia are going to be a separate continental island, and Maine's going to rise 500 feet. So I'm at 525. Maine's going to rise to 1,025, 500 more feet. And so I'll be at 1,025 when the oceans come up 700 feet. So instead of 2 miles from the ocean, I'm going to be about 1,000 feet from the ocean.
So,
and I plan.
Will them levels subside?
They won't. It would take centuries for the ice to form on the new poles, the eastern tip of Brazil, and there's already ice in what will be the southern pole, which is the Himalayas. And even though you look at the eastern tip of Brazil and you look at the Himalayas and you say, my God, they're not 180 degrees apart. How could they be the north and south poles? Well, what you're missing there is that the Pacific is going to narrow dramatically and the Atlantic is going to widen dramatically. And when all that is finished changing, then they will be 180 degrees apart.
Well, I can see, I know, I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, great. Say, for example, we go up a mountain that's 800 feet and the water comes up 700. So we have 100 feet between us. I mean, is it going to be worthwhile living? If, because there's not going to be any
well, see,
animals.
now, if you're talking about a mountain in Colorado, which is all steep, recent granite mountains, extremely steep, probably not. But in Maine here, it's all gently rolling hills. Actually, when there was one continent, Pangea, and it split, the rest of the Maine coast is the west coast of Scotland. So it's very interesting that if I go right down to the shore and then somebody transports me to the west coast of Scotland, I'm looking at the other half. I'm looking at where there's water now. That's what used to be there. So it's interesting. But yes, that's why it's so important that people listen to what I'm saying. The things are not going to stay the same. It isn't just the collapse of governments and economies. This is serious, serious earth changes. And if you care about your family, you might want to build a boat. I don't know what you might want to do, but you got to do something because most of England is going to be underwater and all the rich and the powerful are going to be moving to Libya. They don't want to move to Egypt because that's going to be underwater because that's flat as a pancake. They don't want to move west to Algeria and Morocco because there are native tribes in the mountains there, and you could fight a war for 1,000 years and you'd never get control away from the natives, the Bedouin. So the only place they have a choice of is Libya, and it's like tenderizing a steak. They softened it up by taking out Gaddafi and getting ready for moving ashore, and that's their plan. That will be above water. Africa is actually going to rise a bit, and a huge safe area is Africa. But with the disease and the ill-educated public and the tribal interest and the rich people, I would not recommend that anybody set as a goal going to Africa.
Well, that's okay. We'll obviously put that out there. Steve, you got questions for Gordon?
Yeah, I have some more questions. An annoying little pop-up as well. Just getting rid of that. Yes, this one came in a while ago from Ty. Ty's a regular, long-time listener to the show. I don't fully understand the question, Gordon. I reckon you may. But Ty was wondering, what about those human beings whose souls have been sold by their owner, the Vatican, and desouled? While they're still alive, what happens to the soul, and what happens to the human being living here?
Well, that's interesting because you have total control of your soul at all times. So there's nobody that can sell your soul or take it from you. You have to, that's the beauty of it. The religions have gotten people to baptize you before you could even talk. You're a little infant, you're in your mother's arms, and now all of a sudden you're baptized in a certain church. And you have to, as an adult, review all of your beliefs one by one, and say, well, each time I formed a belief, even as a child, even before I could speak, I have all of that online, and all I've got to do is get the right button pushed, and I'm living that program. And you've got to go back and take all of those beliefs and say, well, this doesn't fit where I'm at now. I'm throwing that out, and I'm throwing this one out, and I'm going and throwing this one out because it isn't working for me. Now I realize. So the best thing you can do is take a nice walk outside, look up at the stars, and say, I renounce all forms of domination and control from everyone and anyone who's tried to limit my freedom as a soul. And I am free, and I am happy, and I am in contact with people who care about me and are going to help me. And that's the unselfish extraterrestrials. And everyone should really do that. Take a walk outside at night and say, I renounce every form of domination and control, no matter where it came into my life now, because I am a free soul, and I am going to make my own decisions, and they're going to be good ones, and they're going to allow me to live as a free, independent, eternal soul. So that's an exciting question, really, if you think about it.
Oh, that's a good answer as well. Gordon, Chris and Eric both have questions in relation to the Greys. Chris is wondering what is the agenda of the Greys, and Eric is wondering, he'd like to know what the Greys sound like when they're talking. In telepathy, there has to be some voice, or else you can't get language out of the noise, he says.
Right. They talk, it sounds normal English, just like you would expect it would. Mostly it's pictures, but a lot of times it's language. And that leads me to these really interesting, I have to tell you, I'm sorry for whatever plans you might have had for the next 10 minutes, but I've got to tell you this. So, my wife was worried about me on the night of December 26th, and she was having a dream, what if Gordon dies, or what if he's not around, what's going to become of me? And as she's having this dream, which I think a spouse can think that, what would happen if my wife died? What would happen if my husband died? What would happen if I were alone again? What would I do? These are normal thoughts. Excuse me. As she was dreaming that, the Zetas broke in and said, quote, "You are never alone, Janet. We are always with you. And the very next time you go outside, we will prove it to you." So, she woke up on the morning of the 27th, which was all heavy rain and drizzle. It was a miserable day. And she's telling me this over coffee, that she had this dream. And we knew that we were running out of cut firewood. We had to take the tractor and go to the top of the mountain where we had the firewood pile, put more in the bucket and drive it down to the house and dump it into this firewood wagon that's right outside our door, which we cover with a tarp so we could stay warm. So, but the weather was so miserable. There was fog that was, you could lucky if you could see a tree at 150 feet. And it was drizzle, and there were big splots of rain, and we just kept putting it off. And the whole day went by, and at 5 o'clock, the sun set. And I, if we're going to get the firewood, we got to do it right now. And she goes, okay. So we go to get our clothing on, and I'm slower because I'm waiting for a hip replacement surgery, as I discussed before the show. And so it was a little trouble for me to get my boot on. So she goes out the door, and the door faces north, and she made a right turn, and that's towards the corner of the house. And then she looked to the southeast, which is where the top of the mountain is, and the tractor's parked in that direction too. And as she looked in the rain and the fog, there was a huge, several 100-foot diameter metal sphere hovering atop the mountain, ionizing the air around it like a bright LED red. And she goes, "Oh my God, there's a UFO. Gordon, get out here. Get out here. Gordon, there's a UFO. It's huge. It's a ball. You've got to see it. Come out here." So I was only like 90 seconds behind her, and she's yelling to me to come out and see this. She's standing there. Now, you got to realize we live at the top of a mountain with no neighbors, and it was rainy and foggy. So there's no way that anyone could have seen this except for Janet. This was a personal visit for Janet. Just like they said, that was the first time she went outside since she had the dream. And there it was. And I get outside, and it was gone. So, okay. So we get the firewood. Friday night, the 27th, Janet has a dream where she's on a saucer. It's a huge mothership. It's like a gorgeous hotel. It's like the most modern, ultra-modern hotel you've ever seen. And it's like a giant ballroom. And she's in there with extraterrestrials, and they're standing around explaining the future. And next to Janet is her sister Nancy and several of Nancy's friends from Southwest Harbor. So, Nancy is running her hands all over the surfaces of the room and all these devices, and she's just marveling over it. And Janet kept saying, "Nancy, would you stop doing that and come over here and listen to what the extraterrestrials are saying?" And Nancy wouldn't stop doing that, but Nancy's friends were all extremely interested. So you've got to understand that Janet's one of 9 children. She's the black sheep of the family. They all said, you're born, you make money, and then you die, and that's all there is to life. Why do you keep asking about the meaning of life? And so they've basically shunned her whole life. And even now, we've been together 24 years. I think her sister Nancy has called Janet twice. So the only time that Janet has any contact with her family is when she calls her brother, one of her brothers, or her sister Nancy, and forces a communication on her. Other than that, there isn't any. So Janet, on Saturday morning the 28th, now the fog went away, the temperature plunged, it was 10 below zero, it was icy cold. She wakes up and she goes, I had this dream, I was on a saucer with Nancy and her friends, and Nancy wasn't interested, she was just interested in the technology and the room, but she wasn't interested in what the ETs had to say. And she's telling me this, and we're having coffee, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and it's Nancy. So Janet and I put it on speakerphone because we don't like to hold the cell phone up to our ears. We like to put it on speakerphone in front of us. So Nancy goes, oh, she goes, I went with my husband up to our camp. They have a camp on a lake, and it's got a peaked ceiling, and it's glass all the way up. And I've been in the camp. It's the size of a postage stamp, and the upstairs is one big bedroom. And they have their bed with the back to the wall, so you can lay in bed and you can look through this glass going up about 10 feet high, and you can see the lake. So she goes, we're up at the camp. Did you see the full moon last night? It was spectacular. And she goes, I know Gordon's scientific. Does he have a Geiger counter? So Janet hands the phone to me, and I said, why do you need a Geiger counter? And because I do have one, actually. I got it at a military surplus store. They had 100 of them, and I bought one, and it didn't work, so I brought the batteries back, and I tried all 100, and I took the one that worked the best and brought that one home. So I do have a working Geiger counter. Cold War surplus, $100. So she goes, I think my comforter is radioactive. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, the full moon was so spectacular, I kept shaking Sherm, and he wouldn't wake up. He's such a deadhead that I lay back on my pillow, and I pulled the comforter up, and I was patting the comforter. And as I patted the comforter, little sparkles came off the comforter and filled the room. And every time I patted the comforter some more, the sparkles filled the room, and I was looking at the full moon. And she goes, it was such a beautiful sight, and I was so happy. And she goes, but I think my comforter is radioactive. So I said, Nancy, are you familiar with phases of the moon? Which you would think she was because her husband's a lobsterman. So she goes, yeah, I know the phases of the moon. I said, well, Nancy, do you realize that on the new moon, the sun and the moon are in the same place in the sky? So when the sun sets, the moon sets too, and there is no moon. She goes, yeah, I know that. And I said, well, last night was the new moon, Nancy. There was no full moon. What you saw was the flying saucer that you were on with your sister. And they created a screen memory for you that you remember looking out the window at this pleasant, beautiful full moon, the likes of which you had never seen before. And when you patted your comforter, that was fourth dimensional. Those were sparkles. That wasn't radiation. And she goes, oh, I'm telling you, this comforter is from China, and I'm going to call our other sister, Lorraine, and ask her. So, okay, fine, I can't tell her anything. She calls Lorraine, and Lorraine says, was it cold? And Lorraine goes, well, that was static electricity. But who has ever seen static electricity cause sparks that last in the room for minutes, tens of minutes, floating around until the whole room is filled with sparkles? So there have been open microphone things in our area, and people usually sign up. You get 20 minutes, and people play a song that they wrote, or they play an instrument, or they read a poem, or they tell a short story. But Janet and I have been going to them, and we sign up, and people are like, what are they going to do? And I get up with pictures of Planet X, pictures of the future Earth changes, and I talk about Planet X, pole shift, and extraterrestrials for 20 minutes. And there might be 150 people in the room, and 147 of them are smirking and sneering and laughing at us, and 3 people are watching us very seriously and nodding their heads. And when my 20 minutes is up and I walk through the room, the 3 people come up to us and say, you're so brave to do that, and it's so important that everybody know that, and you're telling the truth and nobody else can appreciate it. And I said, well, at least I got to tell them. Whether they believe it now or they realize it's true later, I don't know.
Well, this is the problem, I have to say, Gordon, that, you know, I've said it before on the show, we're all on the path of knowledge, and some people are just not ready for the information. So the headspace they're in at the moment.
See, you can see that if Janet and I would do that voluntarily, where there's nothing in it for us, we're not getting paid, we're not making money, we're not getting clients, we're not doing anything, we're just sharing information that needs to be shared with the whole community.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, I mean, myself and Steve are the same. You know, there's people that have ridiculed us and said, you know, a couple of things, conspiracy theorists and all that kind of stuff. We don't get paid for it. We just have a moral conscience and feel it has to be done.
Exactly. I have to do this. That's why I was born, to be here at this time and to do that.
Yeah,
so
and we feel the same.
You see that if we do that voluntarily for no reason at all, then it's likely that if the extraterrestrials are taking people from the communities up to tell them about the future, that they would ask us to come along too, so that we could say to the people when they arrive on the saucer, we can say, look, these are the extraterrestrials we were talking about. This is the future that they're going to tell you about. Listen to it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, and you know, let's hope, you know, if that is happening. I mean, I can't turn around and agree with you, because I don't have any point of reference to actually say that happened to me, or this, you know, there's nothing that I can say that, you know, it's happening. And so but I'm going to stay open-minded to it, and maybe somewhere down the line myself and Steve might end up on a ship somewhere, I don't know, but until I actually have physical experience or some kind of, you know, understanding or see something or feel something or whatever, I'll just put it on the fence. I won't say it's not happening.
Well, there's a great video you can watch. It's called I Know What I Saw, you know. I mean, that's how I got started, is seeing is believing. Like, you know, you can think I'm crazy, but I know for a fact I'm not. And how crazy am I if I ended up with a mountaintop and I graduated the top of my class in high school, college, and law school? And, you know, like, how really crazy am I, you know?
No,
do I sound crazy,
no.
You know? Am I not making sense with you guys? I'm sure I am making sense.
No, I totally agree.
Have to ask themselves.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and people have to ask themselves. As I say, some people are on a path of knowledge, and they just haven't reached that point yet where they have an open mind to stuff like this. I mean, myself and Steve can accept it definitely and keep an open mind to it. But some people will just, you know, they'll just throw it to one side and go, you know, you're crazy, and, you know, there's no such thing like this going on, it's all mind control. But that's because they haven't reached the point yet where they're ready to take it on board and to examine it. And, you know, when they're ready and the time's right for them, that's when it'll happen. So that's just the way we see it.
That's what I'm saying, is that all the people who have these bright auras, who can be identified because they've already achieved this level of consciousness, they're being taken up and told all of this stuff. And it's going to be like the ETs are just going to flip a switch, and everybody's going to remember the whole thing and go, oh my God.
That's brilliant. Now listen, we have 3 questions, and we need to do a quick...
I got some more incidents. I'm sure you're going to love them. Can I give you those first?
No, we don't have time, Gordon. Sorry, we're going to be running out of time. This is why we're going to need to do part 2. Yeah, we only have about 5 minutes left.
Well,
so,
you're going to have me on again?
Yeah, of course, no problem. We'll do a part 2 with you. No problem. Because I know there's loads more information that you have and that we can talk about, but we just are up against the clock. So we have 3 questions here. If we can do a quick fire, 1-sentence answer with these, that would be great. Steve.
Yeah, sorry about that, Gordon, but we are under pressure because, we do share a stream, and we have to be out of here bang on when the clock strikes.
God bless you.
Yeah, but I mean, we could sit here and listen to you speak all night. I'm sure our mind will be blown by the end of it. But I'm going to crack on with the questions. I have 2 questions from Andy. Question 1 from Andy is, could you ask Gordon if he's aware of the elite's New World Order plan to slice up the planet into 10 easy-to-control sectors or regions, just as in the movie The Hunger Games?
Yes, you can just kiss those planes goodbye. If you're part of the powerful and the elite and you're very wealthy and you're sitting there on your estate listening to this broadcast, you can kiss your ass goodbye.
Okay. And the second question from Andy. Andy says, the moon is an imposter, arrived only 10,000 years ago, and only reflects the light from the true creator, the sun. Is this true?
The moon, look, the entire solar system was constructed to be levels of ascension in consciousness. And that when you die, you go out of body to the moon where you decide what your next step is. And there's extraterrestrial selfish ones on the dark side of the moon where you can't see them. There's extraterrestrial ruins all over the moon. It actually has been here a lot longer than 10,000 years. And the life on Earth would not really be possible without the tides. The tides are a magical, wonderful thing that have created change that allows for growth. And so, yes, the moon is a very special place. Everything in the solar system was put here for a reason, and it all has a definite purpose. And nothing is by accident. And no, it didn't just suddenly arrive. It's been here a long time, and you can go back to seeing ocean tides as far back in history as you want.
Brilliant. Okay, Gordon, we've reached that time of the evening. Listen, thanks a lot for coming on. It's much appreciated.
You're kidding.
Yeah. It's just we have we do a 2-hour show, and we've other things to talk about as well. Before we finish up, we're going to be finishing up now in a few minutes. So listen, a big thank you for coming on. Is there any websites or anything that you want to put out there to the listeners?
Just go to ZetaTalk.com, and I know things that aren't on there. Their focus is on Planet X, Pole Shift, and the Aftertime. That's their focus. Okay. I know stuff before that and after that. So anything that I mentioned that you might not find in there, that's because I've got extra information.
Brilliant. Okay, just stay with us there for a minute, Gordon. We'll go to a musical break, and we'll be back after.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMIreland.com.
Okay, Paul Young, Every Time You Go Away. Just filling in the little gap there, the musical interlude as we call it here. That was great information. We're just kind of shooting the breeze there while Paul Young was doing his thing with Gordon. He has agreed to come on. He said he has a hell of a lot more information that he wants to share with us.
Brilliant, exactly. Well, good information. Look, keep an open mind, guys. It doesn't mean you have to believe it, but just keep an open mind and do your research and check it out and see what you think. And if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Don't be too quick to poo-poo it before you've done the research, because that's just ignorance. Okay, so, check it out. And we don't know. I mean, as I said, me and Steve we've had no experiences like that at all. But we're going to keep an open mind to it. We could just keep an open mind to it. Now, we've got a few minutes left. Just a couple of things I just want to announce. You guys probably know about the American Spring and what's happening over in Washington at the moment in America. There's thousands of people going to Washington to actually protest against Obama and the government, and they want to impeach him and take him out. And fair play to the people doing it. Again, it's down to people power. So we just need to do this for ourselves. We have the elections coming up this Friday, May 23rd. Try and get people out to vote if you can. Because if people say, I should have all the same, and they stay at home and don't vote, that is going to play into the hands of the mainstream parties, and we don't want them in. Come on, so we need to make sure that the relatives, your friends, everybody else, tell them how important it is. Even if they vote an independent or vote somebody else, don't vote the mainstream parties. At least they have the vote. And make sure you have a black pen, not a pencil. And only tick the boxes that you want people that you're interested in. Don't tick second or third to the mainstream parties. We have to get these people out. That's just the way it is. We have to get them out. And the way things are going at the moment, I think the DDI party are doing brilliantly. I think they're getting loads and loads of support. I think the independents are doing well. And, the likes of Claire Daly and Mick Wallace and Ming Flanagan are doing a brilliant job as independents, and they're exposing so much and bringing stuff out. And there's a massive consciousness move that's going on. It's just phenomenal what's happening. So much information out there. So keep up the good work, people. Educate people. Get the information out there. And keep tuning in and listening in, and we'll keep doing what we do. Is that right, Steve?
No, we'll do what we do. I know the people on People's Internet Radio, they'll keep on doing what they do, and I think we're all in the same boat at the end of the day. And just actually something that Gordon mentioned, which I kind of had a visualization when he said it. When he said we should go build a boat. Do you reckon we should build a boat in our back garden, and then like when the seas rise, we just throw everything onto it and
I don't
lift it to safety?
I don't know about building a boat. We might have to try and get a small boat or something, but yeah, I think we need to have a talk off air exactly. If that was to happen, I mean, out of let's technically speaking, I'm saying it is going to happen, but if it did happen, what would you do? And I think that's an off-air discussion that me and you are going to have, Steve.
Yeah, I feel an arc coming on. I feel a beard, a long white robe, and some arc building.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. We'd have to see anyway. But well, if the waters are going to rise up that high, 700 feet, I think where we are, although we know we can get the land a bit higher, it depends how quick we can get up there. With supplies and survive. Now, it'd be different if the waters came in and then subsided, and then you could come back down again. But if he's saying that the waters are going to stay at 700 feet, well then, I think we're pretty much screwed, really.
I heard somewhere before as well that, people talk about the hidden city of Atlantis. Well, I heard before that if this pole shift does happen and a lot of the landmass will be underwater, that you would actually see Atlantis, it wouldn't be underwater anymore. Now, I don't know if Atlantis is a real place or if it's made up. But imagine that if like the whole planet or a lot of the planet was underwater, and then this city just rose over.
Well, Atlantis is supposed to be off the west coast of Ireland.
Is it?
Yeah. So
that's where the dolphins are.
If you look at the maps. I was going to say, one of these predictions that I've known for a long time as a kid, I don't know where it come from, was that Ireland wouldn't suffer from fire and brimstone. Ireland would go underwater. Yeah. And I've known that from being a kid. Maybe, I don't know where it was said, maybe one of the aunties or uncles said it when I was younger. And, if you look at what obviously Gordon just said with the rising sea levels, he wouldn't be too far off the mark if Ireland goes into the sea.
Well, let's just hope it doesn't happen, because I don't know, it wouldn't be nice. Could you imagine just kind of being woken up? I mean, I know what you're saying about the sun and the CMEs and all that, but imagine just waking up in the morning, or being woken up, let's say 2 o'clock in the morning from your sleep, and you're woken because your bed is starting to float. I mean, what would you do? Well,
Andy says here, Andy has been at OYM Studios on Walton's Mountain, and he says, you guys are seriously high and in the middle of nowhere anyway. No, that's just the drugs, Andy.
Yes. That's Alan's aftershave.
Yeah, we are high, and we are in the middle of nowhere, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be safe.
No.
So you never know. I mean, there is kind of peaks and troughs where we are and everything else. So maybe 700 is, it could be hit and miss. Although it could be 700, it could be 600 where we are because of certain things happening. You never know. Because water finds its own level anyway.
I'm just thinking when you say the peaks and the troughs, every time you see a trough, there's generally a politician's nose in it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Right, on the People's Internet Radio later, just after us, Vin's going to be on with Guy Taylor. And I'm sure Guy's been on OYM before, and Guy, I'm sure he has loads of information. I think he had a recent court case which he won. I'm sure he's going to be talking to Vin about it. I didn't get a chance to hear Van der Man interview last night. I did try and click on the PIR podcast, but for some reason on Facebook or on the website it didn't work. I don't know whether Vin got the message there, but if they have a link, I'll have to have a listen to that. Now, Ben Gilroy is going to be on prime time tonight at 22:11, I believe, on RTE. So if you want to tune in to that, if people want to see Ben doing what he does best, I think it's Ben anyway. I don't know whether it's Ben or Vanova. I think it's Ben as far as I know. So we'll just see, but we have to get out there, folks. We have to wake people up. We have to make them conscious of what's going on, explain to them what's happening in the world as much as you can, and wake them up and get them to vote, because if this mainstream parties get in, they're just going to destroy. I mean, they're destroying the country as it is, but it's just going to be 10 times worse.
This could be last chance saloon, to be honest.
Mind you, Andy did say earlier on that a lot of people that he's spoken to are saying that July seems to be the time that they're all pointing at for things to happen. So you never know. We'll just have to take it, bit by bit and play it by ear.
So you're saying that the floods could come in the middle, possibly come in the middle of July during the Irish summer. How would we know?
How would we know?
Because it rains here all the time.
All the time. Well, as Gordon said, ZetaTalk, Nancy Leader says 8 out of 10. 8 is the actual social awakening which is happening now. 9 is the collapse of all the systems, and then 10 is the pole shift. So, I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens anyway. We just have to see. But what we'll do is, next week we have a chap on called Piers Corbin. And Piers Corbin is from a website called weatheraction.com. And we've asked Piers to come on the show before, but because of he had to fly over to America and we missed him and all that, we've asked him to come back on. So fingers crossed Piers will be on the show next week. And his weatheraction.com is very tuned into the weather. The actual experts go to him for advice, because they have I believe they have some kind of sequence or some pattern which they know, and this pattern tells them exactly what's going to happen because they know how the system works. So, going into an ice age, I think he pretty much agrees with us that we will be going into an ice age, and Gordon's just said it, and Stuart Stridler was on our show and he said it. So, a lot of people are agreeing with the fact that forget about this global warming, we're going into some kind of ice age, mini ice age. So,
yeah, and speaking of an ice age, I just want to say Vin from PIR was on one of the local stations in around Dublin, FM Liffey Sound, and he was speaking with Mick, another good guy, two good guys actually, and Vin mentioned a movie called Snowpiercer, and he actually gave me the information as to where I could find this particular film. And it deals with kind of the ice age post chemtrail scenario. And I have to admit, I watched the film. It's 2 hours long. I didn't know what to make of it. It's very interesting. It's also, as I say, 2 hours long, so it's interesting and it's long. The end came, and I still didn't know what to make of it. It was kind of a couple of hours after, when it was still kind of playing over in my head, that it made a lot of sense. So if anyone can get a hold of that particular movie, Snowpiercer, it's definitely worth a watch. It's 2013, so it should be in the video stores. And
very quickly, there's a movie by John Irwin told us a movie called Soylent Green. It was 1970s. Who was what's his name? Who did Moses?
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston's in it. Soylent Green, 1970s. Check it out. He said that's what the New World Order want. If they get their own way. So if you want to check that out. For now, it's that time. Okay, take care, and we'll talk to you next week. It's Alan James saying stay safe. Bye-bye.
Okay, for myself, Stephen George, I say sayonara to all my Japanese friends. And we do it all again next week. Pass it on to PIR and the sultry sound of Vincent. Take care. See you next week.
Open your mind.